Good morning, everyone, and welcome to University Unitarian Church. My name is Jon Luopa. I'm one of the ministers here and delighted to welcome you into our sanctuary this morning, and to those who are following the service on the live stream, we welcome you as well. Just a couple of announcements as we begin, before we begin the service this morning. As many of you know, Halloween is next Sunday, so we'd like to have a fun pumpkin day together. We ask that you bring your carved or decorated pumpkins to display at church and pumpkin-themed baked goods to share. This is all voluntary. And there will also be a trunk or treat for the kids and the families in the parking lot that afternoon, and you may read all about this in the e-news and on the website. After each service, each week, there is an information session for those who are interested in learning more about Unitarian Universalism in this church downstairs in the Dix room. And if you would like, you're welcome to join Carol Flanagan and her team down there. And today, the Board of Trustees will have their monthly conversations beginning at 12:15 to 1:15 in the Natfold room. And if you'd like to join, please either stick around or you can follow it also on Zoom. Young adult group meets from 12:30 to 1:15 today, and this afternoon the art committee will host a reception for the new display that we have here of the work of Jane Emmons. I'd like to welcome Jordan Updike, who is our singer this morning. Glad to have you with us. And today is also United Nations Sunday. There's an event this afternoon and one on Thursday coming where you may learn more about what's upcoming beginning next Sunday and the following week on the climate conference in Glasgow, Scotland. Details to register for those events can be found also at the website and the e-news. Let us begin the service this morning, friends, with our prelude.
I call us to worship this morning with these words from Margaret Keep. As surely as we belong to the universe, we belong together. We join here to transcend the isolated self, to reconnect, to know ourselves to be at home, here on earth, under the stars, linked with each other. Welcome to worship this morning. Welcome to University Unitarian Church. Would you please rise now in body or in spirit for our Doxology, followed by our hymn, remembering to keep your masks on and to feel the music rather than sing or hum it.
I very nearly patterned my testimonial after that song. Serendipity. Good morning, my name is Cindy Fuller, and I've been a member of UUC since 2003. Many of you know me as the manager of the UUC bookstore, but I've also taught preschoolers in the religious education program and served on the Leadership Development and Sunday Welcoming Committee. For me, UUC is a house of memory and hope, as John has often said on this pulpit. Every week I walk through the Memorial Garden and see the names of so many people I've met over the years. I visit with the parents of my former preschoolers, most of whom are out of high school. Yeah, I'm getting old. I'm reminded of the sermons and music that I've heard here that have awakened my spirit and simultaneously challenged and encouraged me to act on my beliefs. I hope that we'll have choirs and hymn singing back before too long. Please, please. I also hope that UUC is a community of memory and hope for many others long after I'm gone. I'm a realist, though. I recognize that memory and hope are not enough to sustain any house. I have to invest in its maintenance, which is why I contribute to UUC. I'm thankful for the impact that UUC has had on my lives and on the lives of others here and in the community. When I walk through the door every week, I see the direct results of our contributions in new members, a beautiful and accessible facility, a thriving religious education program, and inspiring works and music. And now, please join me in saying the offertory words that appear on the screen. This church is a community of ourselves. Its memory and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. When we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it.
So growing up Unitarian Universalist in a small fellowship that trended humanist, I didn't grow up with a lot of biblical verses as part of my religious education or part of my home, but there was one that was omnipresent, and it is from the book of Micah, from the Hebrew Bible. And to me it speaks of what does it mean to live a religious and spiritual life? And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. Would you please join me now in the spirit of prayer and of meditation? Holy One, source of all, grant me the humility to wake each day in gratitude for all the unearned graces I enjoy. Gratitude for this body, which connects me to all of life. Gratitude for these lungs and each breath, from the very first to the very last. Gratitude for the presence of beloveds also waking up on this day. And gratitude for this incredible planet Earth, lifeboat in a vast and cold universe. Holy One, teach me the breadth of your mercy, that I may choose forgiveness over righteousness, connection over fear, humility over judgment, that I may remember that all is of you, and each person inherently worthy by the fact of their birth. Strengthen my heart to do justice. Embolden not only my courage, but my compassion. Help me to remember that hope is born again and again by action, and that this hope is best sustained when that action is shared. And when I inevitably stray from the spiritual path, when I am unforgiving or ungrateful, when my love of comfort overrides my love of justice, when pride threatens to separate me from the truth of our interdependence, may the ancient words of the Hebrew prophet ring in my ear. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. I invite you to add the silent prayers and meditations of your own hearts. May it be so, and amen.
Our second hymn this morning is hymn number 88, Calm Soul of All Things. Please stand or remain seated as you wish, and we'll listen to Jordan sing to us. It certainly is wonderful to be back in the sanctuary, in the chapel for live services, and also to continue broadcasting them or sharing them on the live stream. which allows people to do that safely at home and at any other time of the week when it is more convenient for them to watch it. Frequently, we get some feedback from the live stream audience, usually from folks who are far away and are in viewing the service on that particular morning. And a couple of weeks ago, we heard from a youth group in Palo Alto, California, watching the service with their assistant minister. And they wanted to know what this thing was behind the piano. And we told them that it was a harpsichord, and they wondered if it was ever played. And we said, of course it is. And they said, we want one of those for our church too. So, it was interesting. The minister who was with them, his sister was in my LRY youth group 40 years ago in Concord, Massachusetts. So I don't know how that's possible because I'm only 29. But anyway, there it is. So we have all these connections with people all over the country, and that's kind of fun too, isn't it? Given the nature of my work, every once in a while I do struggle with wondering what it is that makes life worth living. What is it about life that keeps us interested and engaged and sufficiently satisfied to go on? Does it really depend on what we are able to accomplish in our lives, or is it who we are as a person? That's probably putting it all too simply, of course, because how can you be a person without activity, or how can you have an active life without being a person? And so I'm going to risk oversimplifying once again by saying that these two things, doing and being, are probably two distinguishable approaches to life, at least for the next 15 minutes or so. Even during this pandemic period, which has gone on much longer than any of us have wanted it to go on, I find that I am still very much busy doing all kinds of things. And I have had many occasions during the last year and a half when I've been able to pause and just wonder what it is to be. Last week I had to have a crown on a tooth, and they make the crowns now in the dentist's office, so once they've prepped you, then they have to wait for the crown to come out of the oven, design and come out of the oven and so forth. And the attendant says, so you've got about an hour, what would you like to do? If you want, you can get up and you can walk around, and you could go out in the parking lot or go in your car and come back, or you can read a book, or you can do whatever you want. And I said, no, I would just like to sit here. And, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm just going to sit here and think. Are you okay? She said. I said, no, I like to just sit and think, sit quietly and think. You do? Oh, okay, so there it is. In fairness, though, keeping overly busy does justify my rationalization that I am being a very productive person and responsible and needed. I seem to have a need, and I wonder if you do too, to do things that have identifiable effects. Even things that are not in themselves pleasant to do have been satisfying because I can point to them and affirm the results. Years ago, I bought 4 Adirondack chairs made out of eucalyptus wood, and for many summers they were well weathered outside, but then they needed to be stained again, and I kept putting that off year after year after year, and finally I decided this year I really need to do it, so I did. And all summer long, as I looked out the kitchen window at those 4 chairs, I marveled at how amazing a painter and stainer I was and how beautifully I had done that. There was a lot of satisfaction. On the other hand, some things that are pleasant to do yield a kind of discontent because I'm either aware that others are no longer able to enjoy doing such things, and my guilt robs me of satisfaction. Or the blatant futility or irrelevance of so much of the daily routine can be very troubling to us. I want to do things and I need to do things, and I have guilt about doing things. And I'm confused as to whether what I am doing is what I should be doing, you see. Many years ago now, I learned to a large extent that the worth of my life was bound up with what I was able to do, and how being able to see the results of my efforts assured me of my worth. You might wonder how such a challenge plays itself out in the profession we have chosen for ourselves. Because ministry really works with intangibles. It should work with intangibles, even for Unitarian Universalists. Most of the time, I feel as if there are no tangible results to all the work I do. I go home at the end of the day and I'm tired because I've been busy all day, but I can't really point to anything that I actually did, and it's a little troubling. I'd have to say, frankly, that one of my frequent companions is a persistent sense of failure and an occasional sense of incompetence due to this inability to measure results. And this can be a crushing burden to carry, especially at vulnerable moments. I think it is true of some of us, but I think it's true really of all of us, that our sense of self-esteem or self-worth is linked to what we are doing. A person who feels inadequate or of questionable worth usually associates that feeling with the inability or failure to do certain things. A parent may feel that they are very inadequate if they want or must work full-time. And I remember how demoralized my own father was when his company folded and he was suddenly unemployed, and he worried about providing for his family. He grew up in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and it was the stereotype that the father, the husband, had to provide for the whole family. Mom was home, my mother was home, and I was a little kid. Dad is unemployed, they're newly married, they have a little baby, and he is failing because he is not providing. And it is amazing to me that after all of these years, my childhood reaction to that episode easily and viscerally surfaces within me. Seeing him so demoralized and feeling so incompetent and a failure hurt me as a child because I knew him not to be any of those things, and yet was the burden he carried because he wasn't able to work. This applies equally for those who are no longer allowed to do. How many elders, I can tell you over the years, have told me, you know, I'm just not able to do much of anything anymore. And they doubt whether life is worth living when they're no longer of use, either to themselves or to others. And just to be alive can be burdensome for us. Is there anything pernicious, then, in joining the value of our lives to what we are able to do? This is a critical question for us as I try to discern a way of living in a world in the wake of pressing challenges all around us. We live with very dire climate predictions that will affect all life on earth. And the corporations have been very successful in putting the onus of the change of that on individuals, while absolving themselves of responsibility for this crisis. We live in a country so partisan, so divided from each other, that it is scary for us to think about what the future might be like if certain predictions come to pass. What are we going to do about this, you see? What are we going to do? We have to find something to do. We're living still in a country that has finally awakened to its racist past, greatly challenged in some places, of course, but enough of a critical core of people in the country of conscience who are wanting to begin making amends for the sins of so many generations, not only here in this country, but all over the world, almost since the beginning of history. Somehow we feel that our worth would be clear only by what we do in response to these issues. This desperate need to do something to validate our own being as persons, whether we support one or other of the various directions in which we can handle these problems. And the first fierce urgency of now is the clarion call to action and to doing something. But who is being called to do what? It is often only in exceptional circumstances, like our own, that we discover the value and importance of being. Our society would have us think that our real value is to be measured only by what we can do. And from a strictly rationalist economic point of view, unless our producing exceeds our consuming, we are a burden upon others and the world. And the law of the marketplace is the survival of the fittest. We speak affirmatively of self-sufficiency and independence, and we do operate that way. And the message becomes, living means nothing more than doing. If you're not doing something, you're irresponsible, you're lazy, you're copping out, you're not wanting, you're stalling, you're hiding, you see. Yes, being and doing are both important, but doing alone is not enough. We must help the wounded and bury the dead, but we must also ask the deeper question, who is a person? What constitutes a human being? Who is a human being? Perhaps we in this community have a worse time answering this than a lot of others. Acknowledging the proper limits of our doing and forgetting the priority of our being. Our basic posture as liberal people, educated, sophisticated, largely affluent people, is rationalist and activist and reformist. If something is wrong, we need to analyze it. We work at it. We amend it, fix it, change it, and we are by nature doers. There is much to be said for this posture toward life. There is nothing intrinsically wrong with doing. Its importance cannot be gainsaid. The person who wants to do something with his or her life is surely more appealing than the person who devotes great energy into trying to be somebody. Doers are people who have at least some sense of responsibility for making a contribution to the lives of others. But the danger lies, however, in supposing that doing is the primary source of one's value and worth. We do value others for their contributions to our lives, and we do value our lives for our contributions to others. But these contributions are not just in what we do, but in who we are to each other. And this is as valid as nations as it is for individuals. The value of one's life to others, even to oneself, simply cannot be measured by what we do. I know that doing what I think I ought to do is often easier than being who I feel I ought to be. I can more readily effect a change out there in the environment, with little cost to me actually, than I can within me in who I am. But being is always prior. It is more important, and it shapes the pattern of our doing. So many times we have to keep doing because the quality of being that's doing the work is not deep or significant enough to effect lasting change. And so we have to keep doing it over and over and over. What this means, to me anyway, is that life is not something to be attained. It is not an achievement. It's not our doing that makes it whatever it is. To be sure, if we have abilities and talents, if we have energy, we will want to use these things and enjoy them and offer them to others. But prior to anything we can do is the life we have received and continue to receive at the hands of other people. This is the life that comes to us in being, not doing, in relationships, not accomplishments. It is valued as a child is valued not for its achievement, but because it belongs to the web of existence without which we would perish. Evelyn Underhill, the British writer and mystic, once said, quote, "We mostly spend our lives conjugating three verbs: to want, to do, and to be. But the fundamental verb is to be. Being, not wanting or doing, is the essence of a spiritual life. You can busy yourself your whole life and not have a spiritual quality. You may make a contribution, you may not, but the spiritual component or the religious component is missing. It seems to me that life is most complete and fulfilling, most worth living, when we experience ourselves to be organically related to other people, belonging to a network or matrix of relationships in which the most important thing is the awareness that we cannot be unless we are bound together. And it is the very absence of this solidarity in being that prevents us from doing anything constructive. What we do does not cease to matter, but who we are somehow matters more. And when that happens, life is experienced not as an accomplishment, but as a gift. And life has value and meaning and purpose, even amidst tragedy, because we belong, we are accepted, we are noticed, we are loved. Life is worth living when we know ourselves to be known as we are for who we are, by others, by God, and the enduring spirit of life. I think the great Mahatma Gandhi had it right when he said, we must be the change we want to see in this world. And what we should do never ceases to matter, but who we are always matters more. So may it be. Amen. Our closing hymn this morning is hymn number 159. Be seated. Thank you. It's a nostalgic day for me today. Today is my parents' 68th wedding anniversary. They're not here anymore, but they reside in my hearts. And of course, this tune, Finlandia, reminds me of my grandmother, and I've told you this over the years too, what an inspiration she was to me. As a boy, I would go with her to the Finnish club by the lake on Sunday afternoons for programs. She was quite a comedian in many plays there, but when they would sing the Finlandia, I would stand there and look up at the tears rolling down her cheeks. When the Russians took Karelia in 1940, and 400,000 Karelians had to be rehoused, and they were sent to Finland because they're related to the Finns, and the Finnish president said, "We will take them all into our homes, in our villages, in our towns. We will resettle all of these people. These are our people, and this is how we're going to handle this problem," and they did. And then the Finnish president said, "And now we need Finns everywhere in the world to help us take care of this great effort, and so send us whatever you can that's of value." And my grandparents were farmers and poor, and they looked at each other and said, "What can we send? We have no money." "Well, we can send our wedding rings. That's the most important thing we have to help resettle all the people," and so they did. They did it because of their love for each other and for their people, and they were willing to sacrifice for it. I wish many other problems were as easy to handle as that one seemed to be. It wasn't easy, of course, but we have great issues facing us. But it is the quality of being and the depth of relationship we have with each other that motivates us to sacrifice for each other so that all may have a better life. If you see God, may God be with you. If you embrace life, may life return your affection. If you seek a way, may a path be found, and the courage and companionship to take it step by step. Have a good week. Amen.